Hello Pokemon fans, I'm Professor K for the Pokemon Evolutionaries and welcome to another episode of Deck Tech Thursday. This is a series where we build decks for you guys so you have a better understanding of the competitive scene. Of course, standard rotation has been announced, but don't be afraid, you can still play your favorite cards all the way up till September 1st. So even though you will see cards in this deck that have been rotated out of the standard format, don't worry, they're still legal until September 1st, 2016, so you still have 2 more months, give or take a few days, of being able to play the cards that you were used to playing during this current format. With that being said, this week's Deck Tech Thursday is going to be Mega Rayquaza. Now, a little bit of background about this deck first before I get into the profile. This deck actually won me 2 tournaments. Yeah, 2 back-to-back, like right in a row, Friday and Saturday night. This deck is 8-0-1. So I've tied 1 game, lost 0 games, and won 8 games in 2 days. That tells you how powerful this deck is, and I'm currently playing in an area where we're finally getting some really good competitive players. So this is not to be taken lightly. This deck is extremely powerful, and once rotation does occur, this is going to be once again another Tier 1 deck. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into this here so I can show you guys exactly what makes this deck tick and why it's so good. I never saw myself struggling to draw cards. A couple of times I had a Mega Rayquaza powered up with a full bench, Skyfield and everything on turn 1. Turn 1. It's just completely overpowered. This deck is extremely good, and I really hope to showcase that power to you on Battle Frontier Friday next Friday. All right, let's go ahead and get into the deck here. First and foremost, we're going to start off with 1 copy of Rayquaza EX Colorless. The only reason we include 1 of these is because of this first attack. Intensifying Burn for a single colorless energy does 10 damage, but if your opponent's active is a Pokemon EX, you deal another 50 damage. So you're dealing 60 damage for 1 in a case where maybe you're just kind of in a position that's a little tough to start with. You have some kind of way of attacking for a single energy, and the only reason why we include 1 of these is because of that common lightning weakness. Mega Manectric, you got Night March, there's a lot of things, Raichu, that'll hit this thing hard. And we don't want that, especially if we don't Mega Evolve right away. So we got 1 copy of Colorless Rayquaza. Next up here, we're going to move on to our Dragon type Rayquaza. That's 2 copies of Rayquaza EX Dragon type. You will not be using any of these attacks, but in a pinch you could use Dragon Claw because it is a double colorless energy. But this Rayquaza has the same amount of HP, this has 10 more HP, 180 HP versus 170 on the colorless, and it has instead a Fairy weakness, which is a little more uncommon. Not to mention, Fairy decks are slower to start, so you will have Mega Evolve before it's ever an issue. So that's why 2 copies of the Dragon Mega Rayquaza, or Dragon Rayquaza I should say, is much better to have more of than the colorless. Just because of that uncommon weakness, the fact that Fairy decks will not set up fast enough almost every single time to do anything to this, because once you Mega Evolve, you're colorless anyway. All right, so with that being said, let's go on to the big heavy hitter of this deck, and that is Mega Rayquaza EX Colorless. 220 HP, Emerald Break, 30 damage times the number of Pokemon on your bench. Oh my goodness, this thing is a beast. You're gonna be running 3 copies of this, by the way. Just for the purposes of being able to read the attack a little bit better, you have a better idea what the card does. There you go. 30 damage times the number of Pokemon on the bench, on your bench, I should say. And here is where this card comes into even bigger play. Look at this ancient trait right up here, Delta Evolution. Delta Evolution, you may play this card from your hand to evolve a Pokemon during your first turn, or the turn that you play that Pokemon. That means, turn 1, you start with a Rayquaza. Let's just pretend there's a Spirit Link attached. Say this is a Spirit Link, right? All of a sudden, turn 1, okay, I'm gonna Mega Evolve and do whatever else I need to do because it's not gonna end my turn because of the Spirit Link. Or, if you don't even have the Spirit Link, you can just go, okay, well, I can't do anything else, so let me just Mega Evolve and pass. This is the one time where Mega Evolving without the Spirit Link will not hurt you if you don't have it ready because you can do it on turn 1. Delta Evolution. It's so good, and this is such a powerful attacker. With a full bench on Pokemon with Skyfield, you're hitting for 240 damage. 8 Pokemon on the bench times 3, 240. Now this deck doesn't run Muscle Band, but if you wanted to, you could actually do 260, but there's really no reason to. You're not getting at almost every single thing, even things that have Fighting Fury Belt on it that get 40 extra HP. You're knocking them all out. I mean, a Darkrai EX, for instance, goes from 180 all the way up to 220. Well, you're doing 240. So, I mean, it's just really, really good, and it sets up so fast. It can outspeed Night March sometimes, and that is a big deal. Sometimes the prize exchange doesn't work the way that you want it to, but Mega Rayquaza is just overpowered. Now, let me warn you. This deck is probably one of the priciest decks that you will ever get, and here is why. This deck runs Shaymin EX, but not just one copy of Shaymin EX, not just 2 copies of Shaymin EX, not just 3, but 4 copies of Shaymin EX. This is not a budget deck, my friends. I am so sorry for that, but to make this deck work to its fullest potential, you need 4 copies of Shaymin EX. Now here's what I'm gonna hear. Well, if you bench 4 Shaymin, you're got a Lysander bait. You're gonna get taking 2 prizes every single turn against you. Well, this deck is so fast that the Shaymin EX isn't even relevant on the bench. And most of the time, when your opponent bumps your Skyfield, what are you gonna toss out? Shaymins. It really does not ever become a liability. I've not had it, a Lysander Shaymin, ever affect me in a game. Not once. And I've played not just the 9 games in tournament, but I've also played more games on top of that, and I've never had an issue with running 4 copies of Shaymin EX. Also, I'm gonna hear, well, Professor K, you're gonna deck out easier. Well, no, you're not, because you just have to control your resources, and you can choose to bench Shaymin and use it to fill up your bench to increase the power of Emerald Break, but you don't have to draw the 6 if you don't want to. Most of the time you will draw up to 6, but you don't have to. That's the whole point. I have not even come close to decking out with this deck. I think the closest I came was 10 cards left in my deck. You hit so hard, so fast, that it doesn't even matter how much cards you draw, because you're mostly set up within the first few turns of the game to just start wrecking house. So, that being said, 4 copies of Shaymin EX, yes, I know it's expensive, but this deck just wrecks everything when you have this in play. Alright, now to assist ourselves with getting a full bench of Pokemon, we're going to be running Hoopa EX. Now, not just 1 copy, but 2. So Hoopa EX, we're going to be using specifically for Scoundrel Ring. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench, you may search your deck for up to 3 Pokemon EX, except for Hoopa EX, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Shuffle your deck afterward. So here's what my turn 1 usually looks like. Usually I start with something, even if I don't want to start with a Hoopa. Sometimes I start with a Hoopa, sometimes I start with a Shaymin. It happens, guys. You're going to start with stuff that's not going to be favorable. You only run 3 Rayquaza, and this is what you want to start with. You run 6 Pokemon right here that you don't want to start with. Not to mention there are 1, 2, 3 other Pokemon in here that you don't really want to start with either. So it happens. It's fine. We have ways out of it. Don't worry about it. But turn 1, usually I'll have something in the active, and I'll have an Ultra Ball. I will Ultra Ball not for Shaymin, but for Hoopa. I'll get the Hoopa, put it down, search my deck for 3 Pokemon. Now if I'm starting with Rayquaza, I'll grab myself a Mega Rayquaza, a Shaymin, and something else. Either another Rayquaza or one of these future cards here I'm going to tell you about. And I can go ahead and then play Shaymin, draw to whatever I need. If I come across a Spirit Link, or if I have one already, I'm Mega Evolving turn 1, and it's setting up my bench. If I draw into another Ultra Ball, I'm going for the second Hoopa, and I'm going for more Rayquaza, more Mega Rayquaza, more Shaymin, or more Pokemon over here. It sets up so fast. It's ridiculous. I love this deck. I really do. It's one of my newest favorite decks of all time. So Hoopa EX is really good for that. Yes, it has a 2 retreat cost, but we have ways out of that, and I'll get to that here momentarily. All right, we also run 1 copy of Glaceon EX. Now, this is where my build differs a little bit from most others. Glaceon EX, its Crystal Ray attack during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from evolution Pokemon. So I've come to the conclusion that basic Pokemon are not quite as prevalent in the format in my area as evolution Pokemon. So I switched this from a Jolteon build to a Glaceon build. And it hasn't helped me all that much, but it also hasn't hurt me either. I don't feel like I could have really ever used Jolteon or Glaceon effectively in any of my matchups, because Mega Rayquaza just, he does it all. But I think this will actually help more in a pinch than anything, because Greninja and Trevenant are pretty big threats. Being able to prevent damage from them, it's pretty good. You're not going to protect your bench, obviously. from the 30 damage spread around from Trevenant, but you will prevent your active Glaceon, and you also will prevent Tree Slam from doing 60 damage to it as well. Glaceon is a really good Pokemon. Also, you know, if you're dealing with something that didn't necessarily get knocked out by a Mega Rayquaza, Second Bite does 20 damage plus 10 for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. You can make use of that attack as well if you wanted to just take another knockout, or you can just keep using Crystal Ray. You're mostly going to want to use Crystal Ray though, because why wouldn't you at this point? So one copy of that. We also have one copy of Zora. It really doesn't matter which Zora you pick here. You can pick this one, or you can pick the other Zora from Breakthrough. Doesn't really make much difference. Both of them have 60 HP, but I like this one because I like the art on this one better. And also one copy of Zoroark. Zoroark, its stand-in ability. Once during your turn before you attack, if this Pokemon is on your bench, you may switch this Pokemon with your active Pokemon. So this is one of the ways that we can get ourselves out of a rough situation where we've got something in the active like a Shaman, or a Hoopa, or a Glaceon, or this Pokemon over here that I haven't mentioned yet. That way you can attach a Float Stone to Zoroark, you can stand in and retreat and go into another Mega Rayquaza and just keep doing what you need to do. That's one way you can do it, not to mention it's a very powerful secondary attacker. It does take 2 energy attachments to power up a Glaceon, just like it does for Mega Rayquaza, whereas Zoroark's Mind Jack attack only requires a double colorless. So you're hitting for 10 plus 30 more damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. It hits really hard if they're not paying attention to their bench, and they may not even realize that you have a Zoroark because they're too concerned about the fact that Mega Rayquaza is going to annihilate them, and they need to have Pokemon on their bench for backup just in case you take those knockouts. It's a good card in the deck. I really like it. A one-off has not been an issue getting it out because, again, we run 4 Shamans, we have supporters, we have draw power for days in this deck. So there is that. We also have another way to retreat as well. This is a newer addition to the deck, and it's something that I just actually thought of recently, because why would you not use this? It helps fill up bench space, and it also helps you with your retreating issues. One copy of Manaphy EX. We're going to be using it for Aqua Tube. Each of your Pokemon that has water energy attached to it has no retreat cost. Why didn't I have it in there sooner? I don't know. This is just such a obvious addition to a Glaceon-based deck where you're running water energy alongside a Mega Rayquaza instead of electric energy or lightning energy and Jolteon. Why wouldn't you have Manaphy? So I threw that in there, and I think it's going to be a great addition because I've started with Hoopa and been stuck in the active. I've started with Shaman and been stuck in the active. My Float Stones were prized. My Zoroark was prized. Whatever. This is just another way to fill up the bench, deal extra damage, and also take advantage of free retreat if you have a water energy attached. Also, in a pinch, you can use Mineral Pump for 60 damage and heal 30 from each of your benched Pokemon. So if you got something on the bench that's, you know, a little bit weary, say for instance from Trevenant, here's your perfect combination. You Crystal Ray, right? You deal the damage to Trevenant. Or retreat into Manaphy. Start using Mineral Pump, deal 60, heal 30. They attack, hit for 30, heal 30. Hit for 60, heal 30. You know, it's a great Trevenant counter as well if you happen to be stuck in item lock, because this is a very heavily item-based deck. So this is the Pokemon lineup. We've got 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 Pokemon in the deck, and I think it's a good number. I really do. I had to take out a couple of supporters that I didn't necessarily want to, but after playing with the deck, I didn't really use them, so I think this is probably the optimal build, at least for myself. You guys can decide for yourselves. All right, let's move on to the supporter lineup. The supporter lineup is going to look a little bit weird to you, but just bear in mind, we have 4 Shaman EX. We have almost all the draw power we need right there. So we're going to be running 3 copies of Professor Sycamore. Discard your hand and draw a fresh hand of 7. Obvious for anyone who is playing in the TCG how important this is. I only run 3 of them because this isn't a deck that you want to discard a ton of because you're already going so fast through your resources anyway. Because of 4 copies of Shaman EX, we're only going to run 1 copy of N. That's right, only 1 N. 1 N is all I can take on the channel, and 1 N is all this deck needs. So there is the 1 copy of N. Each player will shuffle his or her hand into his or her deck, and then each player draws a card for each of his or her remaining prize cards. It's a great disruption card. You should never really have to use this late game to your advantage, but it is a good card in the very beginning. If you don't have a way of drawing into something like a Hoopa to get your Shaman, or if you don't draw into a Shaman, or whatever the case may be, to really just speed up the process of this deck. So that's our draw support. Boom, 4, that's it. And we have our Shaman EX as well. Also, 1 copy of AZ. This is perfect for Pokemon that are damaged to pick them back up. or if you've got something in the active that you don't want there, pick it up and put it into your hand, like Hoopas. Also, you can, if you find yourself in a situation where you need another copy of Shaymin EX, but they're all on the bench, or you have one on the discard pile and 3 on the bench, then you can AZ up a Shaymin, put it back down, draw up to 6. It's a great versatile card in that instance, but mostly it's meant to get things out of the active, such as Glaceon, Hoopa, or Shaymin if you don't want them there. But it does really help also to get the Shaymins up to bring them back down, and also to heal off any damage. We also run 1 copy of Hex Maniac. Now, a lot of people say, why do you want to run Hex Maniac when you have so many Pokemon with abilities? Well, here's the thing about Hex Maniac. You play out your hand. You use all of your abilities. Then at the end of your turn, if you don't want to play any other supporters, because it doesn't run very many, then once you've used everything, boom, Hex Maniac. Now your opponent's Pokemon don't have any abilities whatsoever. They cannot utilize their abilities. And then coming back into your turn, you have your abilities back. People need to understand that this card does not hurt you. It does not hurt you. Just be smart with it. Don't play it as your first card of the turn and then go, oh shoot, I was going to use abilities. Use out your abilities. Play out your hand. Use them. Then close it out with Hex Maniac. So 1 copy of Hex Maniac, really good against Greninja to stop that Water Shuriken. I mean, what can I say? You can VS Seeker for it over and over again if you need to. It just stops a lot of really important stuff. Also, it stops that item lock on Trevenant too if it's active. All right, we got 1 copy of Lysander. Originally, this deck had 2. I don't really think you need to. 1 copy of Lysander with VS Seeker works out really well. Switch one of your opponent's active Pokemon with one of their benched Pokemon. And also, we have 1 copy of Skyla. As far as this deck having a lot of draw power, sometimes you just need to get that trainer card that you really need, like Skyfield or a Rayquaza Link. There's a couple of different things you could go for with this, an Ultra Ball to get the Hoopa, whatever. I still think Skyla has a place in this deck. It may not be the most important card, but I think a 1-of definitely helps, no matter what. Finally, we have 1 copy of Xerosic EX. There's still Night March out there. There's still Seismitoad out there. So being able to discard a special energy or a Pokemon tool card is really, really important. You can do it on your own if you wanted to too, but I don't see why you would really want to. But yeah, this will help get you out of Toad Lock. It'll slow down Night March from being able to attack if you're discarding their energy. They're gonna have to draw into another one. And with only 4 DCE in the deck, sometimes that's a little difficult. So there is our supporter lineup, as you can see. Next up here, we're going to get into our items. Our items are pretty standard to start off with. We've got 4 copies of VS Seeker. Get a supporter card out of your discard pile and put it into your hand. Very standard card, very good card. I'm glad that it's remaining in the format as well, even though it's rotating out of Phantom Forces. There is a secret rare in Roaring Skies, so the card remains legal for yet another season. Also, we've got 4 copies of Ultra Ball. Discard 2 cards, get a Pokemon out of your deck. Simple as that. Most of the time, you're going to be going for Hoopa, especially in the beginning. Remember, go for Hoopa. You can get other Pokemon with Hoopa. Just saying, Hoopa. All right. And also, this card does occasionally discard resources that it really needs back, or if Pokemon get thrown in the discard pile by a bumped stadium or so on and so forth, you have options of getting that back as well, or Enhanced Hammer to get away your DCE or whatever. 4 copies of Puzzle of Time. If you play 2 of these cards together at the same time, you can go in your discard pile, get 2 cards, and put them back into your hand. Or if you want to, say you're ready to play a Shaymin, but you really need a certain card, and you only have 1 Puzzle of Time, and you don't really foresee yourself getting another one anytime soon, you can use it for the first portion of the card, which says, if you played 1 card, look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put them in any order that you want. It helps if you can only Shaymin for 1 or 2 to get that extra chance of getting the card that you need. But mostly you're going to be wanting to play in this for the second effect. Playing 2 of them at a time, taking 2 cards out of your discard pile, putting them into your hand can really be game changing, and it was many times for me. As a matter of fact, I needed to play 2 Puzzle at a time to get back 2 Shaymin, to bench them, make my bench full, and 1 hit knock out a Mega Gardevoir. That was a big deal. Also, you can't play a Mega Rayquaza deck without 3 copies, at least 3 copies, of Rayquaza Spirit Link. Being able to Mega Evolve and not lose your turn is a big, big deal, especially after the first turn of the game. If you really don't get it right away, this will help you out a lot. Spirit Links are just, they're a staple in Mega decks. You can't go without them. Speaking of Mega, we've got 3 copies of Mega Turbo. being able to take a basic energy card out of the discard pile and attach it to one of your Mega Evolution Pokemon and not be it for the turn. This is really good. It works out really well with the next card we're going to be showing here in the deck. You'll find out here in a minute. But you can power up a Mega Rayquaza turn 1, attach a double colorless energy. You can put, if you got a Spirit Link attached, you can Mega Evolve on turn 1. Then, if you've got a water energy in the discard pile, you can play Mega Turbo onto the active. And if you're going second, that means a turn 1 for you, and you can attack with Mega Rayquaza. It's just so good. It really is. And the card that I was speaking of course, is Battle Compressor. Get used to playing this while you can, or have fun with it while you can, because it may be gone. Now, the time that it may be gone is questionable. If you watched my video yesterday, you'll see why I say that. There's a lot of cards that may not be gone for very long. So if you guys missed that video yesterday, be sure to go back and watch the Pokemon TCG 2017 Standard Format Rotation and Analysis and XY12 Speculation. So yeah, I know it's a long title, but there's a lot in that video. It's very informative, and I'm actually really proud of it, except for the fact that my microphone, where it was hanging, I don't have a treated room, so there was a little bit of echoing, but other than that, I think it went really well. Also in the deck, we run 2 copies of Floatstone. This is our way of retreating the Zoroark, being able to stand in and retreat, creating our infinite loop of retreating. If we have to, if somebody Lysanders up something that we don't want there, we can get out of it very easily. So there's a lot of ways you can get out of less than desirable starts in this game, or less than desirable active Pokemon. You've got your Floatstones, you've got your AZ, you got your Zoroark, you got your Manaphy if it has water energy attached. There's really no reason why you should ever be stuck in the active for more than a turn or 2. Next up, we have 1 copy of Sacred Ash. Because this deck does lose Pokemon really easily when you get your stadium bumped, putting them back in the deck is a big deal, and being able to use them again is even more of a big deal, because the deck loses its power once you're unable to bench more than 5 Pokemon. That's when it's over. You need to bench anywhere between 6 to 8 Pokemon and have it that way for most of the game to really maximize the power of this deck, and also to make sure you're taking knockouts on everything, not just non-EX Pokemon. But the good thing about that is, even though they're going to bump our stadium, we have ways of getting it back. We got Puzzle of Time, for instance, but we also run 4 copies of Skyfield. You should pretty much always win the stadium war in the end, because you have ways of getting it back, number 1, and number 2, running 4 copies of a stadium is not exactly common anymore. It used to be, but not so much now. So you do run 4 copies of the stadium, and it does it does really come in handy to have that many of them. It has not ever clogged up my hand. Sometimes you're running it the same stadium as your opponent, and you're both like, well, 1 Skyfield's in play, what are we going to do? I guess just discard our Skyfields. So it does happen, but definitely a great card in this deck. It's what gives Mega Rayquaza all of its power. So otherwise you'd be dealing, what, 150 damage? That's not enough to knock out an EX Pokemon. No, not more than Shaman for the most part. So that's where you get your power from. Also, we've got 4 copies of Water Energy. I had 3 originally. I found it to be a little bit thin, so I found room for a 4th, especially if we've got Manaphy. We may as well take advantage of it and use it. I don't see why we wouldn't at this point. I mean, this is a way of getting out of the active, and it also allows us to be able to more than likely be able to use Glaceon or Manaphy if we need to attack, because before I only had 1 water energy per Mega Rayquaza, so now I have an extra one in case 1 is prized, or if we do have all 4, we can actually attach 1 to Glaceon or attach 2 to Manaphy, whatever the case may be. And finally, last but certainly not least, 4 copies of Double Colorless Energy. This is what's going to supply most of your power for Emerald Break. 2 and 1 is all you need, 2 energy attachments. You can also use it to Sky Return. You can also use it to Mind Jack. 8 energy in the deck is plenty. You really don't need any more than that. But it's a very powerful deck. I'm really happy with it. It's done very well for me. If I had been able to go to Nationals, this is the deck I would have taken. And I really wish I could have gone, because I feel like I would have been able to perform very well with it. But, you know, you can't turn back time to the good old days. Just saying. Hopefully we'll be able to go to Nationals next year, though, when we're a little bit closer to it, if things fall into place the way that I'm hoping that they will. But that remains to be seen. That's far off in the future. We'll worry about Nationals 2017 when it comes a year from now. But for now, this is the deck. This is Mega Rayquaza for standard format for the end of 2016 seasons going into 2017. And like I said, a lot of these cards, don't count them out yet, because a good number of them may be coming back. Like I said, just watch that rotation video and you'll see what I mean. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, comment down below, and of course, subscribe for more TCG content here on the Pokemon Evolutionaries. For more deck profiles like this, Deck Tech Thursday is always a thing here on the channel. Next week, it is N's turn for whatever deck he decides to build, and then right after that, on Friday, next Friday, we'll be doing Battle Frontier Friday. You can see this deck in action, and you can see the pure power behind it. Hopefully, if it draws the way I want it to. If it doesn't, then I'm going to look like an idiot, but it does usually just wreck house. I've never lost with it. Let's keep it that way. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today. We hope to see you guys in the next video. Like I said, with the deck, do with it what you will. Make it your own. This is not the absolute perfect deck, I have to say. You have to build, but it definitely is a good one. So that's one disclaimer that I want to throw out there. If you guys have any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below or build it to your own liking. All right, that's going to do it for today. So we'll see you guys next time. I'm Professor K for the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and you all take care.